for us and completed his favor upon us, and have chosen for us the submission to God as a way of life. That's not a foreign concept, not to the intelligent person. You just have to be willing to accept the fact that there is a higher power existing that is greater than any human being, and that higher authority governs the whole universe and everything in it. And the founding fathers of this nation had that idea in mind when they declared to hold self-evident the truth of one creator above all, that has provided us with equal rights that are universal and cannot be taken away. And that principle of this equal universal right that cannot be taken away is referred to as being self-evident, meaning that it is obvious and requires no explanation. But when your human appetites or desires become more important than that universal truth, then the evidence is ignored. Perfect example. History shows that Thomas Jefferson wanted to include an anti-slavery passage in the Declaration of Independence. Why? Well, it is said that he reasoned, if you're going to make a declaration that all men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, then you would be a hypocrite to continue upholding an institution that robbed certain men of their freedom, their rights. So what was this passage that Thomas Jefferson wanted to include in the Declaration of Independence? Well, it was a 160-word passage that condemned slavery as one of the many evils foisted upon the colonies by the British Crown. Now, before I go into what that passage was, let me give you the setting of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence took place in an environment of enlightenment. This was the period of the high enlightenment, or what was referred to as the Age of Reason, where the foremost thinkers of the time were advocating for the use of rational thinking in regards to politics, philosophy, science, and communication. So in that atmosphere, Thomas Jefferson saw slavery and a document advocating for individual liberty to be at odds with one another, because it only makes sense that somebody would reason that. But the ones benefiting from the slave trade and all that it wrought turned a blind eye to that contradiction. Their money was on the line, and they were not about to let something like reason come in between them and their property. So the passage was excluded. And future generations would never be able to appreciate and celebrate a document that included the following, and this is the passage, taken straight from history.com. The deleted passage said, and this was addressing King George. It said, he has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. Jefferson would also call the institution of slavery political warfare, or execrable commerce, and an assemblage of horrors. He then criticized the crown for exciting those very people to rise in arms among us and to purchase that liberty of which he has deprived them by murdering the people on whom he also obtruded them, thus paying off former crimes committed against the liberties of one people with crimes which he urges them to commit against the lives of another. So what was it? That part right there was addressing the 1775 proclamation by Britain's Lord Dunmore, which offered freedom to any enslaved person in the American colonies who volunteered to serve in the British Army against the Patriots' revolt. The proclamation inspired thousands of enslaved people to seek liberty behind British lines during the Revolutionary War. So basically what happened was King George was saying, even though the British was upholding slavery and was the ones that helped institute slavery, but they were saying, hey, if you turn against those that are enslaving you over there, then we'll give you freedom. right? So as I said, that passage never made it into the Declaration of Independence because the founding fathers rejected the inclusion of that language. Now, Jefferson was correct in drawing the conclusion he did, but the other framers failed to reason either by outside pressure from the supporters of slavery or some other reason. Whatever it was, they rejected it. And it goes without saying that Thomas Jefferson wasn't just a standby person, but was also a participant, because he didn't stop engaging in the same trade that he claimed to be an assemblage of horrors, right? And out of the 600 or so slaves that he owned, he only freed 10. So he too made a mockery of his own passage, because I guess he figured if you can't beat them, join them. Jefferson's appetite for the benefits of slavery was stronger than the desire to give enslaved human beings their freedom. That's just the truth of it. That comes directly from Monticello.org, the website for the Museum and Historical Information for Thomas Jefferson's home. Matter of fact, when you go on the website, they say that one of the most common questions that the guides, like the museum guides, as historical place guides, one of the most questions that they're asked is, was Jefferson a good slave owner? Seems many people asking this question are struggling. Now, this is straight from the website. It seems many people asking this question are struggling to understand how Jefferson treated the people he held in bondage. Some are trying to understand how he could profess to love liberty and yet own human beings. The reality at Monticello is that treatment of the people Jefferson enslaved was typical for the time and region. Jefferson wrote that he wished to ameliorate the conditions of slavery and treat people less harshly than other violent slaveholders, but he still forced people to labor for the wealth and luxury of his white family. This force was upheld through violence, the threat of violence, family separation, and emotional, psychological, and sexual abuse, even at the home slaveholder. Right? So what does God say? God tells us, indeed, Allah enjoins justice and the doing of good to others, and giving like kindred, and forbids indecency and manifest evil and wrongful transgression. He admonished you that you may take heed. Right? Because we know Thomas Jefferson has some acquaintance with Islam and the Quran. He owned one. So remember what I said at the beginning about the process of developing pictures. Well, the further you go back in history, the less likely you will find the ability to do retakes. You know, where you take the picture over and you didn't like it, you can do another one. So you think if Thomas Jefferson had the ability to look back on his life from 2023 and see how his picture is framed, a person that considered himself to be a man of reason and an enlightened thinker, yet displays such a glaring and detestable contradiction, you think he wouldn't want to do retakes? I think he would. The Quran says, and this is kind of where this Quran kind of just wraps this up in a bow, right? Because Allah says in the Quran, وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا لَا يُهْدِلُونَ بِأَهْوَائِهِمْ بِغَيْرِ إِلْمٍ. And it's translated by many, but many do mislead men by their appetites unchecked by knowledge, right? So this is why Jefferson and the people at the time were able to put out this declaration of freedom, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all men are created equal, yet live in such a contradiction, right? Because their appetites were not unchecked by knowledge. And when the appetite is left unchecked by knowledge, then you become enslaved to the bad thinking and give refuge to the illogical conclusions that are only arrived at because money is more precious than morality, because dollars are more treasured than decency. Why is it illogical? Simply because the appetite to be an authority over and to exploit human beings is not a sustainable strategy, because the natural response from the oppressed is to reject such a condition. No creature will accept to be enslaved physically or mentally unless it has been conditioned to do so by a consistent programming designed to cover up what is in the nature. But you can destroy the nature, the urge to be free. You can beat it down, but you can't kill it. It will always reside in the essence of the human being. And the freedom of the one that is enslaving, right? This is the enslaver, right? His freedom will constantly remind the enslaved of their lack of freedom. It's like waving a piece of meat in front of a starving man and telling him he can't have anything to eat. Or you cut the fat off and throw that to him and you eat the good part, right? It will require the enslaver to be even more cruel in order to remove any idea that the enslaved can gain his freedom, either by force or any means necessary. So even looking up and seeing a bird fly freely through the sky, the enslaved it'll be enough for the enslaved to want to seek out his own freedom. A case in point happened during the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this refers to Bilal ibn Rabah. Bilal ibn Rabah was an African who was enslaved and oppressed in the land during the early part of the birth of Al-Islam. And because Africans were ostracized due to the color of their skin, they were pictured in a bad light, right? Talk about pictures. They were pictured in a bad light by the majority that was in power. Bilal was an African man from Ethiopia, right? Formerly Abyssinia. And he was being tortured by his owner, his enslaver, to denounce the new religion that he adopted, called Al-Islam. He adopted Al-Islam. He heard the message from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it resonated with him, and he accepted Al-Islam. And as the story goes, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, guided by God, sent Abu Bakr, one of the companions, to investigate the reports of a man who believed in the one God but was being oppressed because of his belief. And Abu Bakr found this to be true, and he negotiated Bilal's freedom from his oppressor. And Bilal became one of the companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And on the occasion where a method for calling people to prayer was needed, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Bilal to make the call to prayer, and in effect making Bilal the first mu'adhin, the one who calls people to prayer. He became the first mu'adhin. Now, what did this do? This act done by that perfect human model, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, elevated Bilal in the society and helped to remove the prejudices of those people who saw him as being less than simply because of the color of his skin. Beautiful story, a wonderful example of Prophet Muhammad's wisdom and his adhering to his nature and him responding to the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the story of Bilal is the story of us, the African American. In principle, Bilal represents all those former African slaves and now African Americans who, in the face of oppression, never wavered and remained committed to forge ahead for a brighter future life. What Bilal came to realize is the same thing that the African American pioneers that led the charge for justice realized. And that is when Allah says in the Quran, Mata Nasrullahi, Allah inna Nasrullahi qareeb. When will come the help of Allah? Verily the help of Allah is always near. That's when you have unwavering faith in God and believe that He will bring about a better situation for you. Then the work goes on, the struggle continues. You don't stop, you don't give up, you keep on pushing because you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know that God has your back and that God will send someone to your rescue. Qad aflaha mu'minun, qad aflaha mu'minun. Certainly successful are the believers. And every prophet and messenger of God brought the same message of faith, a message of hope that the one that created the whole universe the things that we marvel at all through ancient times. Always, human beings always marveled at those things that were greater than them, the things that they couldn't comprehend how they came to be, how they existed back then. And now we have the technology to kind of understand it, or understand it way more than they understood in the before. But even in understanding the things that we presently understand, it brings even more wonder. So we marvel at the universe, we marvel at the creation, right? And the message that was brought by the prophets and messengers of God is that the one that created everything that you marvel at, that you wonder at, is the same one that can create a better situation for you. And that message speaks to the very essence of the human being's natural urge for freedom and justice. And it was Imam Zakat Muhammad who expanded upon the works of the pioneers and those who came before him, those seekers of justice that came before him. What he did was he came and he articulated that message in the 70s and built upon the success of the previous leaders who encouraged the African American to see justice as a human right, as a birthright. And what Imam Muhammad did was he led the largest mass reversion to Al-Islam in history, where some 200,000 descendants of former slaves embraced the same faith that liberated Bilal ibn Rabah over 1,400 years ago. And you know, there's a Malcolm X famously said, "We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us," and referring to the events that brought freedom to the early Americans, yet brought slavery and injustice to the African American, right? But the rock of injustice has been lifted off our chest for the most part. The African American Muslims and the African Americans in general have made huge gains within the last 20 years in all areas of American life. And we continue to make strides. And in order to sustain the momentum and progress of those gains that we've made in the last 20 years, it's been huge gains, made that have increased. We made gains all the way in the past as well, from Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, you can Frederick Douglass, all those fighters for justice, allow for us to make gains. But it just seemed like within the last 20 years, we've had the first this, the first that, the first that, the first this, the first that, right? And that's a testament to our commitment to continue to struggle. And also that's a testament to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continuing to bless those who fight for justice and for those who seek a better life. But if we want to continue, right, having these gains, and like I say, ramp it up, because everybody loves progress, but fast progress is even better than slow progress, right? And so if we want to put that into a faster pace, add a faster pace to that, then what we have to do is we have to make sure that we don't get lost in the fog of consumption and appetites driven by the irrational love for material extravagance. We can't get caught up in that. We must embrace the knowledge of what we were created for, the purpose of our design, and what will keep us grounded and working towards building a life where all people have equal access to God's creation. Right? The whole creation is a body of knowledge, and God has made all that knowledge for us to source and to use for our benefit, and it is not the property of any one race of people. When the individual is free to utilize the knowledge embodied in the creation, then the whole community of humans benefit. And that is what African American history, to me, is about. It's about acknowledging and keeping the contributions of those who didn't allow the difficulty to hold them back, and they sacrificed and they held on to the faith that what God put in one, he put in all. And if one man can build a life for his family, can build up his community and provide all the necessary elements needed for sustaining life, a good life, then I should be able to do the same thing, right? So it's just natural. Every creature seeks to promote its life and to fulfill its destiny. That's what God put in us. And that is a code that is written into every life. That's why we have to deal with this virus. And virus can only survive and reproduce by infecting a host. It's nothing personal, The virus has aspirations for life, and we just happen to be the vessel needed for it to flourish. But with the knowledge of how the virus works, we learn how to overcome this challenge. And racism and injustice are viruses. They can only survive when someone accepts to host these despicable terms in their hearts and then pass it on to others. That virus must be eradicated with moral and spiritual purge. The appetite for corrupting good human life must be checked with the knowledge that God placed more value in human life and not in a material benefit one may get by oppressing that life. So in conclusion, I don't want to be too long with it. So I'm going to conclude with this. That the picture, right, back to the picture that is developed. The picture that God has developed is a beautiful picture. The whole human family captured. Everyone is smiling and no one is blurred out or have red eyes. You know, you look at the picture and you think, oh, that's a nice picture. Then all of a sudden your eyes got the little red dots in them. No, not the picture developed by God. The light is shining on each one of our faces, right? That's the picture that Allah has developed. Why? Because the picture that Allah gives is the inside and the outside, right? So when we take a picture, we only see what's on the outside, right? And we be, oh, I don't know, like, but God sees what's on the inside and the outside. So he gives a picture that represents both the eternal and the external, right? So that is the picture that Allah wants us to pick up, take home, and frame, and use to tell the story to our future generations of how we were able to overcome our challenges. So with that, I just want to conclude with the verse in the Quran where Allah says, well, asr in the surah in the Quran, where Allah says, well, asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. By the time, surely man is in loss, except for those who believe and do good deeds and enjoying on each other with truth and enjoying on each other with patience and constancy, right? And that to me speaks directly to justice. So with that, we will conclude our talk for today. If we have any questions, you can put them in the comment sections, or any comments, you can put them in the comment section. If not, we'll go ahead and conclude with the dua that was given to us by Imam Zakat Muhammad. And that dua says, "Oh Allah, we cannot manage this life ourselves without you. Please make of our life what you want it to be, what you prefer it to be. Do not allow us to act on our own. Bless us to act only in accordance to your will. We hear and we obey. We ask for your forgiveness. Please forgive us, and to you is the return. Ameen." Assalamu alaikum. I thank you for your attention and your time, and please stay tuned for our community announcements.
Assalamu alaikum. Get ready for a groundbreaking event as the Islamic Society of Greater Houston, ISGH, presents Resilience Con, honoring the resilience of the human spirit. Join us in Houston, Texas for an unforgettable inaugural Muslim African American History Conference. The conference begins with Jummah on Friday, February the 9th. Immerse yourself in inspiring khutbahs with guest imams at 20 masajid, highlighting the historic contributions of the Muslim African American community to Islam in America. Friday night family nights at various masajid across the city will continue to delve deeper into the history of the Muslim African American community and its fight for equal rights and the right to practice Islam. And then on Saturday, February the 10th, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., will be a full-day conference featuring the most senior members of the historical Muslim African American community from across the country who've witnessed the evolution and progress of the Muslim community through the decades. Engage with other out-of-town and local speakers, educators, activists, and imams who will share their insights on the rich tapestry of our shared history. And this conference will also include a bazaar. So registration is free. Please visit isgh.org/resilience Resilience Con to secure your spot and be part of this transformative experience. Join us as we pay tribute to the exceptional contributions of some special guests who played a pivotal role in shaping the narrative of the Muslim African American community. Don't miss out on this historic event. Resilience Con is not just a conference, it's a celebration of resilience, unity, and the shared history that unites us all. So mark your calendars, spread the word, and join us for an enlightening and empowering experience at Resilience Con. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Get ready for a groundbreaking event as the Islamic